Hello everyone, welcome back to another tale carved deep into the bones of ancient history. Tonight, we sail to North Africa, to the marble streets and bustling harbors of Carthage, once the richest city in the Western world and Rome's greatest rival. Carthage rose from humble Phoenician traders who, centuries before, had crossed the Mediterranean to build a port at a perfect curve of coastline. Over time, that port blossomed into an empire of its own, masters of the sea, founders of colonies stretching from Spain to Sicily. Their fleets rivaled Rome's legions in power, and their silver-fueled mercenary armies feared across continents. For generations, Carthage and Rome circled each other like wolves. Trade disputes, naval skirmishes, betrayals whispered in foreign courts. Tensions exploded in three brutal wars historians now call the Punic Wars. In the Second Punic War, Carthage produced one of the most brilliant military minds the world has ever known, Hannibal Barca. With war elephants and daring tactics, Hannibal marched over the Alps, an impossible feat, and terrorized the Roman heartland for over a decade. Yet even Hannibal's genius could not crush Rome entirely. When the dust settled, Carthage was weakened but alive. It paid heavy tribute, lost its fleet, and turned its ambitions inward, rebuilding markets and ports, trying to regain prosperity through trade instead of swords. Rome, however, never forgave nor forgot. In the Roman Senate, one voice rose above all others, Cato the Elder. At the end of every speech, no matter the topic, he thundered the same demand: Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. By 149 BC, Rome found its excuse. Accusing Carthage of breaking treaty terms, Roman legions landed on African shores once more. But this time, they came not to punish, they came to erase. As the Roman ships anchored off the coast, the people of Carthage watched from their magnificent harbor walls. Tall towers of white stone glimmered in the sun. Merchants fled with their wares, and priests offered sacrifices in crowded temples, hoping the old gods would protect their proud city one last time. The Senate's ultimatum was simple and impossible: surrender hostages, hand over all weapons, and abandon the city to be relocated inland, away from their beloved sea. For Carthaginians, whose identity was carved from trade and ocean wines, this was worse than death. Defiance flared. The city that once ruled the waves now turned every street into a fortress. Citizens, men and women alike, melted down jewelry to forge weapons, stripped temple roofs for timber to build siege engines, and braced for the siege that would decide their fate. Thus began the final chapter, a brutal struggle that would echo for centuries, teaching the world what happens when an empire decides not just to conquer, but to wipe an enemy from the earth. Welcome back. Let's dive deeper into the brutal heart of Carthage's last stand. When Rome laid siege to Carthage in 149 BC, they underestimated the desperation of a city with nothing left to lose. The Carthaginians, cut off from the outside world, turned into an army overnight. Blacksmiths hammered weapons day and night. Every able-bodied man was drafted. Even noble families sent their sons to the ramparts. At first, the Romans tried intimidation. Huge siege engines rolled up to the city's triple walls, towers bristling with archers and catapults hurling stones the size of boulders. But Carthage did not cower. Skilled defenders launched surprise raids, burning Roman siege works and ambushing supply wagons under cover of darkness. The city's greatest strength was its harbor, a marvel of engineering with an inner dock that could shelter hundreds of ships. When Rome thought they had sealed off Carthage by land, the Carthaginians counterattacked by sea. Small, fast ships burst from hidden channels, striking Roman blockaders then vanishing back into the maze-like harbor. Months turned into years. Roman soldiers dug trenches, built fortified camps, and tried to starve Carthage into submission. But the city's resolve only hardened. Inside the walls, desperation bred genius. Citizens turned temples into armories, smashed statues to make catapult stones, and cut down sacred groves for wood. Every family became a workshop of war. Meanwhile, The Romans suffered too. North African heat baked their armor and rotted food stores. Disease spread in the crowded camps, and every Roman legionnaire knew that behind Carthage's walls waited a people who fought not for victory, but for survival itself. Then, in 147 BC, command of the siege passed to a name that would become legend, Scipio Aemilianus, grandson by adoption to the famous Scipio Africanus, the same general who had defeated Hannibal decades before. Young Scipio brought fresh discipline and ruthless vision. Scipio cut off all remaining food supplies. He built a massive mole, a stone causeway, to block Carthage's naval escape once and for all. Carthage countered by digging new canals and building new ships in secret, launching a daring breakout that stunned the Romans. But ingenuity could not stop the inevitable forever. Hunger gnawed at the defenders. Children died in their mothers' arms. Families boiled leather to make soup. Disease stalked the overcrowded city, doing Rome's work where swords could not. Scipio tightened the noose. His legions attacked weak points relentlessly, capturing outlying forts and breaching the first wall. Carthaginians fought street by street, roof by roof, turning familiar alleys into death traps. Women flung roof tiles at Roman soldiers below. Even priests and nobles joined the barricades. For Carthage, there was no thought of surrender. To yield meant death, or worse, slavery for generations unborn. So they fought, believing each drop of blood spilled slowed the enemy just a little more. By the end of 147 BC, famine ruled the city. Dogs and rats vanished, eaten long ago. Yet still, from the highest towers, Carthaginian lookouts watched the Roman standards inch closer every day, the grim promise of extinction marching step by step through the streets they once called home. The siege had become more than a military conquest. It was the slow strangulation of a civilization that dared to defy Rome's will. Ashes and memory welcome back. And now, we witness how one of the greatest cities of the ancient world fell, not just in stone and fire, but in the hearts of its people and the fear of its enemies. By early 146 BC, Carthage was a skeleton of its former splendor. Its marble streets, once crowded with merchants and philosophers, now echoed with the cries of the starving and the clash of desperate defenders. Roman battering rams smashed through the final inner walls. Behind them came thousands of legionaries, steel and fire at their backs. Scipio Aemilianus, now the undisputed master of the siege, gave a simple, terrible order: leave no stronghold unconquered. Room by room, block by block, Roman soldiers advanced through Carthage in what became one of the bloodiest urban battles the ancient world had ever seen. Imagine it: entire families barricaded inside their homes, fighting with knives, burning oil, even bare hands when all else failed. Mothers shielding children, priests chanting prayers to Baal and Tanit as flames licked the temple stones. Some chose to set their own houses ablaze rather than fall into Roman chains. The last defenders gathered in the citadel known as the Byersa, the high fortified heart of Carthage. From these heights, they could see their once great harbors choked with debris, merchant ships sunk and burning. They could see Roman standards fluttering from towers that had once guarded trade routes stretching as far as Spain and Sicily. Inside the Byersa, hunger and disease finished what Roman swords had not. Many Carthaginians, driven mad by starvation and grief, threw themselves into temple fires, believing death by flame would send them swiftly to their gods. Others surrendered, only to be dragged out, chained, and counted as spoils of war. When Scipio finally entered the Byersa, he found not an army, but an echo of a civilization. Emaciated men too weak to lift spears, women clutching dead children, priests still tending sacred fires among the ruin. According to ancient writers, as Scipio watched Carthage burn, tears welled in his eyes. A Roman historian claims he whispered to a companion, "A day will come when Rome shall perish, as Carthage perishes now." Even Rome's greatest general felt the ghost of what he had destroyed. For 17 days, the city burned. Flames devoured libraries, scrolls, statues, homes, and temples. Marble cracked and fell into streets now black with ash and blood. Survivors, about 50,000 out of what was once a bustling population in the hundreds of thousands, were sold into slavery, scattered across the empire like shadows of their former glory. When the fires cooled, Rome salted the earth where Carthage had stood, or so legend says, a ritual curse to ensure nothing would ever rise there again. They passed a law forbidding anyone to live or rebuild within its ruins. Carthage was not merely defeated. It was erased from maps, speeches, and the collective Roman memory for a century. Yet history is a stubborn flame. Carthage's story did not die. Roman poets wrote of Hannibal and his cunning marches. Philosophers debated the justice of wiping out a rival so thoroughly, and generations later, Rome itself fell to barbarian invasions, proof that no empire, no matter how powerful, can silence every voice forever. Today, tourists walk among the stones of ancient Carthage in Tunisia. They stand on Roman ruins built atop older Carthaginian foundations, proof that ashes alone could not bury a civilization's spirit. Carthage lives on in our words, our legends, and the warning it leaves behind. Fear the enemy you crush completely, for tomorrow, their story may outlast your own. This was Carthage, the city that rose from traitors, challenged an empire, and fell in fire, but never in silence.